The autumn sun was setting behind the towering Grand Plaza Hotel, casting long shadows across its gleaming glass facade. A young black man in his early 30s stepped out of a taxi, pulling his wheeled suitcase behind him. He wore comfortable travel clothes, dark jeans and a navy sweater, having just completed a 5-hour flight from the West Coast. Taking a deep breath, he looked up at the prestigious hotel that would soon become his workplace. The Grand Plaza was known for its impeccable service and old-world charm, a perfect blend of traditional luxury and modern amenities. It was exactly the kind of establishment where he had always dreamed of working. As he walked through the revolving doors, the familiar scent of fresh flowers and polished marble brought a smile to his face. He had spent the last 8 years working his way up through various hotels, starting as a bellhop and gradually moving into guest services. His dedication and natural talent for hospitality hadn't gone unnoticed. He'd earned glowing recommendations from every property he'd worked at. The lobby was bustling with early evening activity. Well-dressed guests moved about while staff members efficiently attended to their needs. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead, and soft classical music played in the background. He noticed small details that others might miss. A slight delay at the check-in desk, a guest looking confused about directions, things he was eager to help improve once he started his new role. Finding a quiet corner in the lobby, he sat down in one of the plush armchairs and pulled out his tablet. He was early for his meeting with the hotel manager, and he wanted to review his notes one last time. The position of head receptionist was a significant step up in his career, and he was determined to start on the right foot. His mind wandered back to the rigorous interview process he'd gone through. 3 rounds of video calls, a detailed presentation on improving guest satisfaction scores, and countless reference checks. When he received the job offer, he had celebrated with his family, who had always supported his career choices even when they didn't understand his passion for hospitality. As he scrolled through his presentation slides, he noticed a group of guests being efficiently checked in at the front desk. He watched the current staff's interactions carefully, mentally noting areas where processes could be streamlined. His previous hotel had won awards for their check-in efficiency, and he was excited to implement some of those successful strategies here. A family with 2 small children walked past, the kids clearly tired from traveling. He remembered his own childhood trips, how magical hotels had seemed to him then. That sense of wonder had never really left him. It had just transformed into a desire to create that same magic for others. The position of head receptionist wasn't just about checking people in and out. It was about being the face of the hotel, setting the tone for every guest's stay, and leading a team to deliver exceptional service. He had already studied the hotel's current procedures and had ideas for training programs that would help his future team excel. His phone buzzed with a message from his mother, wishing him luck. She had always taught him to hold his head high and let his work speak for itself. Those lessons had served him well throughout his career, especially in moments when others had underestimated him or made assumptions based on his appearance. Looking around the lobby again, he noticed small details that excited his professional eye. The fresh flower arrangements that needed slight adjustments, the way the afternoon sun created a glare on the check-in computers, the slight congestion around the concierge desk. These were all opportunities for improvement, chances to make this excellent hotel even better. He checked his watch, still 20 minutes before his scheduled meeting. Opening another document on his tablet, he reviewed the staff roster he'd been sent. As head receptionist, he would be managing a team of 15 people across different shifts. He had already memorized their names and work histories, wanting to hit the ground running. A gentle buzz of conversations filled the lobby as more guests arrived for evening check-in. He observed how the current staff handled the increasing volume, noting both their strengths and areas where efficiency could be improved. His mind was already formulating training sessions and workflow adjustments that could help during peak hours. The grand piano in the corner began playing softly, part of the hotel's evening ambience program. He smiled, remembering reading about the hotel's commitment to creating a multi-sensory luxury experience. These were the details that transformed a hotel stay from good to memorable, and he was about to be part of it all. He thought about his small apartment across town, boxes still waiting to be unpacked. He had moved to the city 2 weeks early to get settled before starting his new job. The cost of living was higher here, but the opportunity was worth every penny of his savings. This was his chance to prove himself at one of the most prestigious hotels in the country. Taking another look at his watch, he realized it was almost time for his meeting. As he gathered his things, he felt a mixture of excitement and anticipation. Years of hard work, additional certifications, and countless extra hours had led to this moment. He was ready to take on this new challenge and turn this hotel's already good service into something exceptional. What he didn't know was that his first challenge would come much sooner than expected, and in a way he could never have anticipated. The next few minutes would test not just his professionalism, but his entire approach to handling difficult situations in the hospitality industry. As he stood up to straighten his sweater, he caught his reflection in one of the lobby's ornate mirrors. His father's words echoed in his mind. Success isn't just about being good at your job, it's about how you handle yourself when things don't go as planned. Those words would prove more relevant than he could have imagined. The confrontation began with a shadow falling across his tablet screen. Looking up, he found himself facing two stern faces, a security guard in a crisp black uniform and a woman in a sharp business suit who had the unmistakable air of management about her. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave," the woman said, her voice carrying that particular tone of forced politeness that somehow managed to sound anything but polite. "The lobby is reserved for registered guests only." For a moment, he thought they were joking. Surely they had been informed about his arrival. He remained seated, maintaining his professional composure despite his growing confusion. "There must be some misunderstanding," he began, reaching for his phone where he had saved his employment documentation. The security guard took a step closer, his hand resting unnecessarily on his radio. "Sir, the duty manager has asked you to leave. We can do this the easy way, or we can call the authorities." Other guests in the lobby began to notice the confrontation. A couple sitting nearby quickly gathered their belongings and moved to different seats. An elderly woman at the check-in desk stopped mid-sentence to stare. The pianist's melody faltered for just a moment before continuing. "If you'll just let me explain," he tried again, his voice steady despite the humiliation burning in his chest. "I'm actually the new head receptionist. I'm scheduled to meet with the general manager in just a few minutes." The duty manager's laugh was sharp and dismissive. "Sir, we conducted those interviews weeks ago and have already filled the position. Now, please don't make this more difficult than it needs to be." He stood up slowly, careful to keep his movements measured and calm. Years of experience in the hospitality industry had taught him how to handle tense situations, though he'd never expected to be on this side of one. "I understand there's confusion, but I can prove what I'm saying. I have emails, contract documents." "We've heard every excuse in the book," the security guard cut in. "The fact is, you can't just sit here all day using our lobby as your personal office." The situation was becoming surreal. Through the glass doors, he could see more guests arriving, their faces curious as they watched the scene unfold. Behind the check-in desk, several staff members were whispering among themselves, occasionally glancing in his direction. "I arrived early for my meeting specifically to review some materials," he explained, his professional training helping him maintain his composure. "If you could just call the general manager's office." The duty manager's face hardened. "Sir, I am the duty manager and I know exactly what meetings are scheduled for today. Now you can either leave on your own or we'll have to escort you out." He looked around the lobby, this space that was supposed to become his workplace, where he was supposed to lead a team and implement the changes he'd been hired to make. Now he was being treated like an unwelcome intruder in the very place he was meant to help improve. His hands were steady as he picked up his tablet and slipped it into his bag. 8 years in the hospitality industry had taught him the importance of maintaining dignity in difficult situations. He'd dealt with angry guests, diffused tense confrontations, and handled countless challenging scenarios. But this was different. This time, he was the one being profiled, being judged based on appearances rather than facts. "I understand you're doing your job," he said quietly, "but I want to be clear that this is a serious mistake. I am indeed the new head receptionist, and this interaction will need to be addressed." The security guard stepped closer, his body language becoming more aggressive. "Are you threatening us, sir?" A small crowd had gathered now. Some guests were openly filming with their phones, while others pretended not to watch while stealing glances at the scene. He could feel the weight of their stares, the assumptions being made, the story they thought they were witnessing. The duty manager crossed her arms. "If you don't leave immediately, we will have no choice but to call the police. Is that what you want?" He thought about all the times his parents had warned him about situations like this, all the conversations about having to work twice as hard to be seen as half as good. He thought about the irony of being thrown out of the very hotel he was hired to help manage. Just as he opened his mouth to respond, he noticed movement at the entrance. A familiar face from his video interviews was walking through the revolving doors, and relief washed over him. The truth was about to come out, but the damage of these few minutes would take much longer to address. His mind was already racing ahead, thinking about how this incident could be turned into a teaching moment, how it could lead to better training and awareness. Even in this moment of humiliation, his professional instincts were kicking in, looking for ways to improve and prevent similar situations in the future. The security guard reached for his radio, apparently interpreting his silence as defiance. "This is your final warning, sir. Either you leave now, or we call the police." He stood his ground, knowing help was just seconds away. This moment would change things, not just for him, but for the hotel and its staff. Sometimes the most important lessons come from the most uncomfortable situations, and he was determined to make sure something positive would come from this negative experience. In the tense silence that followed, he could hear the soft music still playing in the background, the quiet murmur of shocked guests, and the approaching click of heels on marble that would bring this unfortunate scene to its conclusion. What happened next would set the tone for his entire tenure at the Grand Plaza Hotel. The tension in the lobby had reached a breaking point. Despite his calm exterior, his heart was pounding as he watched more hotel staff gather at the edges of the scene. These were the same people he was supposed to be leading starting tomorrow, watching him being treated like an unwanted intruder. "Look," he said, keeping his voice steady and professional, "I understand you're following protocol, but there's an easy way to resolve this. My appointment letter is right here on my phone, and the general manager's office is just upstairs." The duty manager's face twisted with impatience. "Sir, I've worked here for 5 years. I know every scheduled meeting and every new hire. I don't appreciate you continuing this charade." A small group of guests had formed near the check-in desk, their phones discreetly recording the scene. He could hear their whispered conversations, some expressing discomfort, others sharing their own similar experiences. The weight of being a public spectacle pressed heavily on his shoulders. Behind the front desk, he noticed a young staff member frantically typing on a computer, likely checking schedules or sending messages. Another employee was speaking urgently into a phone, her eyes darting between him and her supervisor. The security guard took another step forward, his walkie-talkie now in hand. "I'm calling this in. We've given you more than enough chances to leave quietly." Taking a deep breath, he thought about everything this job meant to him. The years of extra shifts, the night classes in hospitality management, the certifications he'd earned while working full-time. He wasn't about to let all that slip away because of someone's prejudiced assumptions. "Before you make that call," he said, addressing the security guard directly, "think about what happens next. What if I'm telling the truth? What if I really am your new head receptionist? How will this look for the hotel?" His words seemed to give the security guard a moment's pause, but the duty manager stepped forward aggressively. "Are you threatening this establishment? Because I can assure you that will only make things worse." More guests were entering the lobby now, slowing their pace as they noticed the confrontation. The normal bustling atmosphere of the hotel had been replaced by an uncomfortable tension. Even the usual efficient flow of check-ins had ground to a halt as staff and guests alike watched the scene unfold. "I'm not threatening anyone," he replied calmly. "I'm simply trying to prevent a situation that's going to be embarrassing for everyone involved. All I'm asking is for someone to make one phone call to verify my identity." A bellhop who had been watching the scene suddenly hurried toward the elevators, presumably to alert someone higher up. The duty manager noticed this too and barked out, "Get back to your post. This situation is under control." He could see his future team members exchanging worried glances. Some looked uncomfortable, others confused, and a few seemed to be putting the pieces together. He made a mental note of their reactions, knowing these observations would be valuable for the changes he hoped to implement, assuming he still had the chance. The security guard finally raised his radio. "Control, this is lobby security. We have an individual refusing to leave the premises, requesting backup and police assistance." Just then, the young staff member behind the desk called out, "Ma'am, I found something in the system. There's a note about a new head receptionist starting this week." "Be quiet," the duty manager snapped, but uncertainty had crept into her voice. "This is a security matter now." He remained standing tall, briefcase in hand, watching as his professional dream teetered on the edge of becoming a nightmare. The irony wasn't lost on him. His first major challenge as head receptionist was happening before he'd even officially started the job. Through the growing crowd, he spotted several hotel employees in management suits rushing toward the lobby. Relief flooded through him as he recognized faces from his video interviews. The truth would come out now, but the damage had already been done. The duty manager must have sensed the shift in the atmosphere because she turned to look behind her. Her face paled slightly as she saw the approaching group of senior staff members. The security guard lowered his radio, suddenly less certain about the situation. In these tense moments before everything changed, he thought about how this experience would shape his approach to leading the front desk team. He had just witnessed firsthand how assumptions and poor communication could create horrible situations for innocent people. The lobby had fallen almost completely silent. The pianist had stopped playing, the check-in desk was at a standstill, and dozens of eyes were fixed on the scene. It was like a freeze frame from a movie, everyone waiting to see what would happen next. He could hear quick footsteps approaching from behind, the sound of multiple people walking with purpose across the marble floor. The confrontation was about to end, but its effects would ripple through the hotel for months to come. The duty manager's confident demeanor had crumbled into uncertainty as she glanced between him and the approaching senior staff. The security guard had taken a step back, perhaps finally sensing that something wasn't quite right about this situation. In these final moments before everything changed, he straightened his shoulders and adjusted his grip on his briefcase. Whatever happened next would set the tone for his entire tenure at this hotel. He was determined to handle it with the same professionalism and dignity he'd maintained throughout this ordeal. The approaching footsteps grew louder, and he could sense the shift in energy throughout the lobby. The truth was about to come out, and with it would come consequences, lessons, and opportunities for change that no one in the Grand Plaza Hotel would soon forget. The revelation unfolded like a scene from a movie. The general manager burst through the crowd, her face flushed from rushing down from the executive floor. Behind her trailed two other senior managers, all wearing expressions of horror as they took in the scene before them. "Stop everything right now," the general manager called out, her voice carrying across the lobby. "What on earth is going on here?" The duty manager turned, still clutching her air of authority, though it was quickly dissolving. "Ma'am, we were just removing an unauthorized person from the lobby who was claiming to be our new head receptionist," the general manager finished, her voice sharp with dismay. "Yes, exactly who he is." She turned to him, her face softening with embarrassment and concern. "I am so deeply sorry for this. I was in a meeting and just got the message about what was happening down here." The security guard's hand dropped from his radio as if it had suddenly become hot. The duty manager's face drained of color as the reality of the situation sank in. Around them, the crowd of guests and staff members shifted uncomfortably, witnessing the dramatic turn of events. "I apologize for arriving so early," he said, maintaining his professional composure despite the circumstances. "I wanted to review some materials before our meeting." The general manager shook her head vigorously. "No, please don't apologize. This is your workplace. You had every right to be here." She turned to face the gathered crowd. "This gentleman is our new head receptionist, and he will be leading our front desk operations starting tomorrow." The whispers among the guests grew louder. Several phones were still recording, capturing the aftermath of the confrontation. The duty manager seemed to shrink under the weight of her mistake, while the security guard studied the floor intently. "Perhaps we should continue this discussion in my office," the general manager suggested, gesturing toward the elevators. "We have quite a bit to address." As they walked across the lobby, he could feel the eyes of his future team members following them. Some looked mortified, others appeared relieved, and a few showed genuine concern. These were the people he would need to lead and mentor, starting with helping them learn from this very incident. In the elevator, the general manager couldn't stop apologizing. "We've been preparing for your arrival for weeks. Your credentials are exceptional, your reference is outstanding. This should have been a welcoming, celebratory day." He took a deep breath, his mind already working on how to turn this unfortunate incident into an opportunity for positive change. What happened today isn't unique to this hotel. It's a reflection of bigger issues that exist everywhere. Maybe we can use this as a catalyst for improvement. The elevator opened onto the executive floor, and they walked into a spacious office with a view of the city. 2 other department heads were already waiting, their faces grave with concern. The afternoon sun streamed through the windows, creating long shadows across the plushed carpet. "I need to be clear," the general manager said as they sat down. "What happened today is completely unacceptable. There will be consequences, but more importantly, there will be changes." He leaned forward slightly. "Before we discuss consequences, I'd like to share some thoughts about training and awareness programs that could help prevent similar incidents in the future." The room fell silent as everyone turned to look at him. Here he was, fresh from being nearly thrown out of the hotel, already thinking about solutions rather than punishments. The general manager's expression shifted from concern to something like admiration. "You're sitting here, having been treated abhorrently, and your first instinct is to think about how to make things better." One of the department heads asked, clearly impressed. "The best way to handle discrimination isn't just to punish it when it happens," he replied. "It's to prevent it from happening in the first place. I've worked in hospitality long enough to know that real change comes from education and understanding, not just from fear of consequences." The general manager nodded slowly, pulling out a notepad. "Tell us your thoughts. How can we make this right, not just for you, but for everyone?" For the next hour, they discussed training programs, policy changes, and ways to create a more inclusive environment. The conversation moved beyond the incident itself to broader issues of unconscious bias and professional conduct. Despite the terrible start to his time at the hotel, he found himself feeling optimistic about the potential for real change. As the meeting drew to a close, the general manager stood up. "I think it's clear why you were our top choice for this position. Not many people could handle such a situation with such grace and turn it into an opportunity for improvement." Looking out over the city through the office windows, he could see the hotel's reflection in the buildings across the street. Tomorrow, he would walk into that lobby again, this time as its official head receptionist. The story of his first day would probably circulate among the staff for years to come, but he was determined to make sure it would be remembered not for the incident itself, but for the positive changes it inspired. The aftermath of the incident spread through the hotel like wildfire. Within hours, the grand ballroom was transformed into an impromptu meeting space, with chairs arranged in neat rows. Every staff member not directly involved in guest services was required to attend an emergency meeting. The atmosphere was tense as employees filed in, their whispered conversations creating a nervous buzz throughout the room. Many of them had witnessed the lobby incident, while others had only heard about it through hurried conversations in back corridors and break rooms. The duty manager and security guard sat in the front row, both looking deeply uncomfortable. They had already been through separate meetings with hotel management, their faces showing the weight of their actions. Around them, other staff members kept their distance, as if the embarrassment of the situation might somehow be contagious. "What happened today?" the general manager began, her voice firm but measured, "was more than just a mistake. It was a complete failure of our values as an organization." She gestured to where he stood quietly at the side of the stage. "Our new head receptionist experienced something that should never happen to anyone, guest or employee, in this establishment." He watched the faces in the crowd, noting their reactions. Some showed genuine remorse, others seemed defensive, and a few appeared confused about why such a big deal was being made. These were the exact attitudes he would need to work with in the coming months. Stepping forward to address the room, he kept his voice calm and professional. "I'm not here to point fingers or assign blame. What happened today is unfortunately common in many places. What matters now is how we learn from it and grow as a team." The room fell silent, perhaps surprised by his measured tone. They had expected anger, accusations, or threats of dismissal. Instead, they were getting a lesson in professional grace under pressure. He continued, sharing stories from his years in the industry, times he'd seen similar assumptions harm both guests and staff. He talked about excellent service being about seeing people as individuals, not categories. His words seemed to resonate, as he noticed several staff members nodding in agreement. The general manager then outlined immediate changes to hotel policy. New training programs would be mandatory for all staff. Hiring practices would be reviewed. Complaint procedures would be updated. But most importantly, she announced that their new head receptionist would be taking a leading role in implementing these changes. During a short break in the meeting, small groups of staff members approached him, offering sincere apologies and expressing their eagerness to work with him. The sincerity in their eyes suggested that real change might be possible. The duty manager finally gathered the courage to speak to him directly. Her voice trembled slightly as she apologized, explaining how she had let assumptions and protocol override common sense and basic human decency. Instead of dismissing her, he listened carefully, recognizing the opportunity to turn her regret into motivation for change. The security guard approached next, his earlier bravado replaced by genuine remorse. "I've been doing this job for 12 years, he said quietly, and today made me realize I need to rethink everything about how I approach it. As the meeting continued, various department heads presented their plans for improving guest and employee relations. The incident had sparked a hotel-wide examination of policies and procedures, forcing everyone to confront uncomfortable truths about their own biases and assumptions. By late evening, when the meeting finally ended, there was a different energy in the room. What had started as a shameful incident was transforming into a catalyst for positive change. Staff members lingered afterwards, engaging in honest discussions about their own experiences and perspectives. The general manager pulled him aside as the room cleared out. "I know this isn't how you planned to start your time with us," she said, "but you've handled it in a way that's already earning you respect from the staff." Looking around the empty ballroom, he thought about how spaces like this were meant to host celebrations and new beginnings. In a way, that's exactly what was happening here, not the celebration he'd expected, but perhaps one that would lead to more meaningful change. Later that night, as he finally headed home, he passed through the now quiet lobby. The same space that had been the scene of his humiliation hours earlier now felt different. Tomorrow, he would return to start his first official day, not just as the head receptionist, but as someone who had already begun to make a difference. The next morning's staff briefing would be his first real test as a leader. He had already prepared notes about improving guest services and streamlining check-in procedures, but he knew his most important job would be helping his team understand that excellence in hospitality begins with seeing the humanity in every person who walks through their doors. As he stepped out into the evening air, he couldn't help but smile slightly. Sometimes the worst moments can lead to the best opportunities for change. The hotel's transformation was just beginning, and he was ready to lead the way. The transformation of the Grand Plaza Hotel began quietly but purposefully. The new head receptionist arrived early on his first official day, dressed impeccably in a tailored suit, ready to lead by example. The lobby, which had been the scene of yesterday's incident, now felt like a fresh canvas for positive change. Staff members greeted him with a mixture of respect and curiosity as he settled into his office behind the front desk. The morning briefing was his first opportunity to set the tone for his leadership style. Instead of sitting behind his desk, he arranged the chairs in a circle, creating an atmosphere of equality and open dialogue. "Yesterday showed us where we need to improve," he began, looking at each team member in turn. "But today is about moving forward. Let's talk about what excellent service really means." His voice carried warmth and authority, immediately capturing everyone's attention. The duty manager from yesterday's incident sat quietly in the corner, but he made sure to include her in the discussion. "Your experience here is valuable," he told her. "You know this hotel's operations better than anyone. How can we use that knowledge to make our guest interactions more thoughtful and personal?" Over the next few hours, he introduced new approaches to guest services. Rather than simply checking people in, staff were encouraged to truly welcome them. He demonstrated how to read subtle cues about a guest's needs, how to anticipate requests before they were made, and most importantly, how to treat everyone with equal respect and consideration. The security team was invited to join these sessions. The guard involved in the incident became an unexpected ally, sharing his own revelations about how security could be maintained while still treating people with dignity. "We can be vigilant without being judgmental," he said, earning nods of agreement from his colleagues. As weeks passed, the changes became more visible. The front desk staff started keeping notes about returning guests' preferences. The security team developed new protocols that emphasized communication over confrontation. Even the housekeeping staff reported feeling more valued and included in the hotel's mission. One morning, a guest who had witnessed the incident returned to the hotel. She approached the front desk, amazed by the transformation she saw. "The atmosphere here is completely different," she remarked. "Everyone seems more engaged, more welcoming." His innovative training programs began attracting attention from other hotels in the chain. He introduced role-playing exercises where staff members experienced what it felt like to be prejudged or dismissed. These sessions often led to emotional discussions and powerful insights. The duty manager, who had initially struggled with embarrassment over her role in the incident, gradually emerged as one of the strongest advocates for change. She worked closely with him to develop new training materials, turning her mistake into a powerful teaching tool. During busy check-in times, he would step out from his office to work alongside his team, demonstrating the standards he expected. Guests noticed the difference. Comment cards began mentioning the genuine warmth they felt from every staff member they encountered. 3 months into his tenure, the hotel hosted a regional managers conference. The general manager proudly showcased the changes in their front desk operations. What could have been a devastating incident became the catalyst for real transformation, she told the assembled executives. The security guard who had nearly called the police on him that first day now led workshops on respectful guest interactions. "We learned that true security comes from building relationships, not making assumptions," he would tell new employees during orientation. Staff turnover, which had been a persistent problem, dropped significantly. People wanted to work at the front desk, attracted by the positive culture and professional development opportunities. The team began to feel more like a family, supporting each other and celebrating each other's successes. One evening, as he watched his team efficiently handling a busy check-in period, he noticed something remarkable. The lobby, once just a grand space for guests to pass through, had become a place where people felt genuinely welcomed. Staff members knew regular guests by name, remembered their preferences, and treated every new arrival with the same level of respect and attention. The hotel's reputation grew, not just for its luxury amenities, but for its exceptional service culture. Industry magazines began requesting interviews about the transformation. But he always redirected the attention to his team, emphasizing how they had embraced change and made it their own. As the 6-month mark approached, the general manager called him into her office. The hotel's guest satisfaction scores had reached record highs. Employee satisfaction surveys showed similar improvements. What had started as a crisis had evolved into a success story that would influence hotel operations across the country. Walking through the lobby that evening, he paused to watch his team in action. The same space that had once been the scene of his humiliation now stood as a testament to the power of turning negative experiences into positive change. Every guest who walked through those doors was greeted with genuine warmth. Every staff member worked with confidence and pride, and the hotel had become exactly what he had always believed it could be, a place where everyone felt valued and welcome. 6 months after that fateful first day, the Grand Plaza Hotel had become a completely different place. The morning sun streamed through the lobby's towering windows, highlighting a space that now hummed with positive energy and genuine hospitality. The head receptionist stood at his usual spot behind the front desk, watching with pride as his team handled the morning rush with grace and efficiency. Gone were the days of cold, mechanical check-ins. Instead, each guest was treated like a welcomed friend returning home. The hotel's transformation had exceeded everyone's expectations. Guest satisfaction scores weren't just higher, they were the highest in the entire hotel chain. The front desk team had won 3 consecutive monthly awards for excellence in service, and their methods were being studied by other hotels across the country. That morning, the corporate newsletter arrived featuring their story on the front page. The article detailed how one unfortunate incident had sparked a revolution in hotel service culture. Staff members gathered during their breaks to read it, pointing out their quotes and smiling at the photos of their team in action. "You know what's amazing?" one of the newest staff members said during the morning briefing. "I heard about what happened that first day, but when I look at how we operate now, it's hard to believe it's the same hotel." The duty manager who had been involved in the incident had become one of the hotel's most effective trainers. She now led seminars for other hotels about recognizing and overcoming unconscious bias. Her personal story of transformation had become a powerful teaching tool. The security team had developed a new approach to guest safety that balanced vigilance with hospitality. Their training program, Security Through Service, was being adopted by other luxury hotels across the city. The guard from that first day often said that the incident had completely changed his perspective on his role. During a particularly busy afternoon, a travel writer checked in and was so impressed by the warmth of her welcome that she decided to write a feature about the hotel. "There's something special happening here," she told the head receptionist. "Every staff member seems genuinely happy to be here." The general manager had recently announced that the hotel's training methods would be implemented across all properties in the chain. What had started as a response to a crisis had evolved into a model for excellence in hospitality. Corporate headquarters sent a film crew to document their success story. They interviewed staff members who spoke about how the changes had affected them personally. Many mentioned how the inclusive atmosphere had made them better at their jobs and prouder of their work. The front desk team had become known for their personal touches. They remembered returning guests' preferences, celebrated special occasions, and handled problems with genuine care and attention. The lobby, once just a grand space, had become the heart of the hotel's community. One evening, a guest who had witnessed the incident 6 months ago returned to the hotel. "I almost didn't come back," she admitted, "but I kept hearing about the changes here. The difference is remarkable. You've created something special." The housekeeping staff reported that guests were more respectful and friendly. The concierge team noted that people seemed more patient and understanding. Even the maintenance staff felt more valued and included in the hotel's mission. During a hotel industry conference, the head receptionist was invited to give a keynote speech about leading through adversity. He spoke about how negative experiences could become catalysts for positive change if handled with grace and determination. The hotel's success had attracted attention from diversity consultants and business schools. They wanted to study how a single incident had sparked such comprehensive organizational change. But the head receptionist always emphasized that the real story was about the team's willingness to learn and grow. As he wrapped up his speech at the conference, he shared a final thought that captured the essence of their journey. Sometimes the worst moments can lead to the best opportunities for change. What matters isn't the challenge you face, but how you choose to respond to it. Back at the hotel, the evening shift was ending. The lobby glowed warmly, welcoming late arrivals with the same enthusiasm as early check-ins. Staff members exchanged friendly greetings with guests and each other, creating an atmosphere that felt more like a community than a business. The head receptionist gathered his things, preparing to head home. Looking around the lobby one last time, he smiled at how far they'd come. The space that had once been the scene of his humiliation had become a symbol of transformation and hope. Every person who walked through those doors now experienced what true hospitality should feel like: warm, inclusive, and genuinely welcoming to all.